Hey guys, Laura Davils here, and today I wanted to talk about one of the rare tarot decks in my collection. It is the Egyptian Tarot, published by US Games and produced by Stuart R. Kaplan. This tarot has a very interesting history, which might be why people, sell it for so much. I'm not sure. I know that it hasn't really been reprinted in this form since 1980, so people just love having decks that other people don't have, and that's a thing, and that's cool. Whenever I do find it, it's anywhere between $100 to $200. There is someone who has a handmade Brotherhood of Light Tarot. I'm not sure where they got the images from, but they basically took images and put them on a backing, and they're selling it for $65 on Etsy. And there is some slight variation between the Brotherhood of Light Tarot and the Egyptian Tarot. And I was lucky enough to do a really intense Google search and find a good article on Purdue University Global on the history of Egyptian tarot cards. So we all know it starts with Court de Gebelin when he proposes and sets forth this idea that the tarot came out of Egypt way, way, way long ago, instead of the reality that it came out of 13th century Italy by combining multiple different popular card playing games. So the majors were one card playing set, and the minors were what we know as the playing cards today. For the most part, and someone decided to slap them together to make a big game. And so they were mostly used, the tarot was mostly used to play parlor games for about 300 years, and we're not sure when people started using them from divination until, Court de Gebelin and some other folks were talking about using them for divination, but of course we can assume that they'd been used for divination for a little while. Anyway, the artwork that comes out of the Egyptian tarot, this stuff, was very different from the other tarots of the time. And the majors, the artwork for the majors, I didn't know this till I read the article. The artwork for the majors came out of a book by R. Falconier, printed in 1896 in France. I'm not going to try to read the book, but it's got the word hermetic and divination in it and stuff like that. And these images of the majors were drawn by M.O. Wegener. I don't know who any of these people are. I've never come across their work before. Now, this specific artwork comes from the 1901 Practical Astrology book by Comte de Saint-Germain. It's not actually written by Comte de Saint-Germain because he lived and died in the 1700s, but in occult communities, I guess you could call them, people believed that they needed pedigree in order for their work to be taken seriously. So they would use old names of people, or they would tell a story about how they learned what they learned in some grand adventure, or from some really, really old mystical person who'd had a grand adventure. And that's the idea of pedigree. You see it nowadays on YouTube when people try to tell you that their great-great-grandmothers used moldavite in love spells. Anyway, it's cute, but it's a thing. I also found out from this article on Purdue University that the guy who actually wrote it is named Edgar de Valcourt Vermont. It's a hyphenated last name. I've never really heard of him much either. And this book predominantly is about astrology and learning astrology until you get to the very back. The very back of the book is what has the tarot in it. Let me find where they start. All right, there we go. So it all starts here. There we go. Oh, wait, no, I lied. It all starts here with the Magus card. Now, these cards are actually numbered 1 to 79 in Roman numerals, and is super distracting. Let me show you what the last card looks like. I think this is the last card. It should be. Although they put the courts in front of the minors, so it would actually be the 10 of Pentacles, I believe, is the last one. Something like that. Anywho, again, these, I very distracting Roman numerals at the bottom, but people really, really seem to like this deck. And I have to say, the cardstock is really, really good. No one has ever shuffled these or used these. My mom liked this deck, but she didn't really use it. That's where I got this deck. I got it from my mom. She got it off of eBay back in the 90s before it was super, super popular. I'm sure she paid the usual 20 bucks for it, right? Anywho, so for the majors, there is a whole page of stuff written in this book. And then there is the minors, where they are 4 to a page, right? And you've got pips. I really like the pips. I think the pips in this deck are the thing that really make it shine and are really cool about it. The court cards, though, because this is based on ancient Egypt, and all these folks decided it would be fantastic to name the court cards Slave, Warrior, Mistress, Master, instead of Page, Knight, Queen, King. And I find that to be fairly problematic, and I don't need to tell you why. This was also written at a time where segregation was totally a thing in many parts of the world. That's another thing that makes me uncomfortable with it. So this is the slave card, and this is the warrior card for the cups. And then this is the queen, and this is the king, or the mistress and the master. Right? So at least the mistress is dark-skinned. I think that was at least a little bit redeeming, but not quite, right? Anywho, the meanings for these cards are very different and very interesting, as it comes from a different time period of tarot reading. Again, this was published in 1901. So, for instance, the Ace of Wands, we'll just read it out here. A scepter tipped with a square, a triangle, and a circle. There is a reason why it is a square with a triangle with a circle. I forget what that reason was, because I'm not really into Hermetic symbolism, but there's a whole thing behind that symbol. Anyway, this arcane means creative intelligence, useful labor, and final success. Not too unusual. The Two of Scepters means that you will meet with great obstacles and will have to watch your interests with constant vigilance. It warns you against a partnership that will prove disastrous. The Two of Wands. Little bit different than how we read the Two of Wands now, right? Anywho, it is a very, very interesting book. Let's read the Slave of Cups. This arcane means that a projected marriage will not take place and that there will be lots of troubles of all kinds on account of women. The problematic tendencies keep coming up, don't they? Yay, 1901 was such a great time. Not. So, the practical astrology portion of this book is mildly entertaining. I haven't read much of it because I don't want my first impressions of, because I don't know a lot of astrology, so I don't want my first impressions of astrology to be any falsehoods that might be here. I think I would prefer to learn from a more modern text if I were to really sit down and learn astrology. So I haven't read too much of the astrology portion, but it's not bad. It definitely looks pseudo-scientific for the 1901 period. So, there is more to the history of this deck than just that, because after this deck, oh, and by the way, this deck was never published in 1901. This deck wasn't actually published until 1980 when Stuart Kaplan did it. So it was not mass printed that we know of. Perhaps people cut the cards out of the books to use them, but there's really no evidence to clearly say that they did. But they were encouraged in the 1896 French book by Falconier, who came up with the majors. They were encouraged to cut the cards out of the book and use the paper from the book as the cards. But in our 1901 practical astrology book, that is not suggested as a thing to do. And also the sizes are different between the majors and the minors because they're fitting 4 to a page, right? In 1936, we have the the Brotherhood of Light Tarot. And the artwork is only ever so slightly from this one. It's literally this artwork just drawn by a different person with a slightly different style. And then in 1996, the same Brotherhood of Light Tarot, again drawn by someone else. They added some things to it, and it was called the Sacred Tarot. And then in 1991, there was a color version called the Ibis Tarot, which I do believe the Brotherhood of Light Egyptian Tarot that's out now that you can get, that's in color and is just like this, but more modernized and in color, I believe is a reprint of the Ibis Tarot. But everyone should know that you can get this deck in color today with these pips, and you don't have to try to find a super, super rare deck. In fact, I'm interested in getting that Brotherhood of Light Egyptian Tarot off of Amazon, simply because I can play around with this deck without, you know, harming the value of my super rare deck that my mom gave me. Because I don't use this deck. It's a super rare deck, and mom gave it to me. Who knows? It might be worth even more one day. But it does have that sentimental value to it. I talked to my mom recently, and she was like, if I ever give you a tarot deck that is worth, you know, more than $500, you have my permission to sell it. And I was like, okay, thanks, Mom. Anywho, because she knows how I am. She knows that I would never sell it. So she was like giving me permission. Yeah, so all of this is very interesting. I'm just going to flip through here to show you guys the pips and why I think the pips are so interesting and promising, right? They make little geometric shapes. The square, the triangle, and not the circle, but stars that energetically make circles, right? I really think that the pips are cool. I wish more people who are doing tarot cards with pips would play around with these pips, because they are kind of cool. Like this one right here, that makes me think of like something that's being protected, right? You know, like just cool stuff like that. What's really interesting to me about the cups is that you have the squares. Like these cups are going in the direction of a triangle, but these are just sitting on the corners of the square instead of making a square, right? And this rectangle, they're all sitting on the corners of the rectangle. Now this one is making a circle, right? I just find it very, very interesting. And then we have some more of your quartz, which the quartz pretty much all look the same. They're just holding different different tools, right? The sword pips are different from the wand pips too, by the way. It's not just the wands are the same as the swords. Like in a lot of pip decks, they'll make the swords and the wands the same because they're long. And I really think that his description of the Ten of Swords is very interesting. If you look energetically at this card, some are pointing out and some are pointing in. So let's read the meaning for the Ten of Swords. A succession of gains and losses, of quiet times and of struggles. You will be your worst enemy, right? And look, you know, quiet times and not quiet times, and good and bad, and danger and safety, because some of the swords are in and some of the swords are out. And that makes the pips slightly more expressive to me. And that's something that I like. Now we move on to the coins. There are a lot of pentacles and stars of different types here in the coins section, which I think is pretty interesting. But that is that for the book. Stuart Kaplan does talk about a little bit of the history of tarot in this little white book. And maybe I will do a flip through and show you guys the little white book, because there's some very weird and strange things in here. Yeah, I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff going on in here. Oh, interesting. He's got like a little cheat sheet for the majors in here as well. Yeah, so if you guys want a full flip through of this deck, I'm more than happy to do it, but I thought that I would use this video to talk about the history of this deck, where it came from, where you can find a deck similar to this, and what it's called. Again, it's called the Brotherhood of Light Egyptian Tarot, and you can find a full color new version that's under $20, you know, out for sale today, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg and a super search on eBay just to find one that hasn't been sold yet, and oh, I can't get my hands on it. Wah. I hate doing videos on decks that people can't get and getting them excited about something that they can't have. So there is an alternative to this. And of course, the Brotherhood of Light is a hermetic fraternity like the O.T.O and all those other groups. People really, really liked their fraternities back in the day. So that is kind of where the Brotherhood of Light got it from. But this was totally out and available to the public long before that, right? Because it was published in 1901. The cardstock is fairly good, and the backings are kind of cute. It's got the little pharaoh, and it's reversible and stuff. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this little info sesh on a rare tarot. If you did, please hit the like button so I know that this is something that you might be interested in the future even. And yeah, if you know anything about this deck or you have this deck, let me know in the comment section down below and we'll have a cute little conversation. And until next time, happy dabbling and bye-bye.